The fight for Therian's freedom results in a duel to the death between Ethan and Sigrid, and though he pulls his punches, she is surprisingly ruthless. Though Ethan does his best to avoid hurting the Fendir heir, he accidentally kills Sigrid, and his hopes of all wolf shifters ends with her. In the Asterius dungeons, Baxian bites off Ruhn's hand in an attempt to free them and Hunt, but their attempts are in vain when Rigela shows up to steal Hunt's lightning. Forced to put her plans in motion, Lidia frees Erithis from her cage and shares her plan with the Fire Sprite Queen. Meanwhile, in Prythian, Bryce, Nesta, and Azriel are witness to Celine's story of the past. Before Nesta and Azriel can attempt to seize her and remove the horn from her back, Bryce claims the power left by Celine in the stone of the prison, only to discover the true evil lurking beneath their feet.
Hey there, we're Book Talk for Book Talk with Jack and Amy, your book besties who take the novels you love seriously. This is Jack.
And I'm Amy, and we bring the tools of literary analysis to the women-written novels lighting up Book Talk, from romance to romantasy. Think of it as your favorite fandom books, treated with the same respect you'd give a classic in a literature class, just with more humor and less homework.
For you, this is a lot of homework for us.
Yes.
Each season, we deep dive into one book, breaking down themes, imagery, and character motivations. Together, we combine our 13 years of literary academic training with our fandom love to help you see your favorite books in a whole new way. We also analyze the story through multiple literary lenses, giving you more than one way to look at the text.
This week, we're discussing Sarah J. Maas's House of Flame and Shadow, the third book in the Crescent City series. In this episode, we cover chapters 20 through 27.
For a complete list of episode and chapter breakdowns, be sure to check out our Instagram at the handle Book Talk for Book Talk.
Before we dive in, let's talk about S.P.I.L.T. Spoilers, perspective and interpretation, language, and themes.
Spoilers. This episode covers House of Flame and Shadow with full context from the preceding books in the Crescent City series, Earth and Blood, Sky and Breath. If you haven't read those, this is your only spoiler warning. Anything in SJM's other series will be saved for our Breadcrumbs and Broomsticks episodes that airs this week.
Also a caveat, I forgot to add, ACOTAR spoilers.
Yeah.
Nothing's hidden.
At this point.
Perspective and interpretation. These are just our takes, our personal readings of the text. We don't speak for Sarah J. Maas, and we know you'll have your own interpretations too. We'd love to hear them, so share away.
Language. We use explicit language, so do what you must do to prevent you from judging us. Honestly, my mom doesn't stop. She does judge.
Does she listen?
No, but she knows that I curse. Because I don't curse in front of her.
Yeah.
Ever. But every once in a while we'll post a clip and then, she'll hear me say fuck and then it's like disappointment. But if my makeup looks good, then she's okay with it.
Themes. We will discuss tough topics like sex, violence, abuse, depression, self-harm, and death. We do our best to flag these moments where we can, but listener discretion is always advised.
As always, let's keep the conversation going. Tag us, DM us, or use the submission form on our website. And if you want exclusive content and live streams, you'll find us over at patreon.com/booktalkforbooktalk. Now, as I have to give a warning, as I always do, I am not recording from home in case I sound different. And if you're watching, I look like a ghost of a woman who has suffered so many. I don't know what's up with
drowned
this
at
lighting.
sea.
I truly do. And if you feel like I'm some kind of perturbed, that's because I am in a hellhole pit of a state called Kentucky. There's no offense to Kentucky. It's just humid as fuck and the AC is broken. So,
and you'll hear birds in the background and they sound lovely because her window's open.
We're just adding some ambiance.
Yes, that's right. All right, this week we ask ourselves the question, does part 1, The Drop, of House of Flame and Shadow, aka The Time We Have in Prythian, sufficiently set us up for the rest of the novel?
Themes we see in this section include misplaced identities, as well as Muse's song, Time is Running Out.
I'm glad you got the reference. Helps that we just talked about it recently. I did.
Muse is also my favorite band.
I know.
We start with chapter 20, and Ethan is getting ready to fight Sigrid. Quote, Sigrid was so small, so thin and frail, and new to this world. This is suddenly very different than the categorizations that he has been putting her under before. He was like, she's an alpha. She's like, there's this natural born warrior inside of her. And now he's categorizing her as like small and fragile, almost childlike.
Yeah. And, even though it might feel demeaning for him to compare her to a child, she is a malnourished woman of a young age who is experiencing the world for the first time. I think that qualifies as childlike. To your point, it's so different from how he's been thinking about her. This is probably the only time he's going to think about her in this way, except for when he actually kills her.
You know?
And it's the only time he's actually seeing her for her reality in a
Yeah.
lot of ways.
Like, I'm not knocking her and saying, like, she's so fragile. Well, she is, in fact, fragile. The problem is that he has not viewed her as such.
Right. Exactly.
Ethan is in a depressive spiral, as one does when they're forced to kill someone. Quote, and now Ariadne had been traded away because of it, too. He barely knew the dragon, yet that was also his burden to carry. Okay, I'm not saying that it's not his burden. I just find it interesting that the word burden is used. Because it's not like punishment, it's something that like he has to carry, like as if like this just happened and now it's his thing that he must carry versus like, no, these are the consequences of your actions.
Yeah, it definitely displaces the blame. It makes it seem like we should pity him and not pity Ariadne.
I don't know if I've ever hated a character more than Ethan. And I'm talking about in my entirety of life. And I meant Voldemort, okay? In books. Ethan doesn't want to kill or hurt Sigrid, but he does attack her first. Quote, Ethan didn't let himself think, didn't broadcast his moves. He launched himself at her before he could back away from this precipice. I don't know if that's like meant to show and reflect his honor or if it's meant to show that he's taking control of the moment. I think it's kind of cheap of him to attack first, which is funny because he calls one of her fighting methods cheap later.
Yeah, Ethan is such an asshole. If anyone's an alpha hole, it's Ethan of this group. Okay, he didn't broadcast his moves. So he's fighting her like a real opponent, but then gets pissed off when she fights him like a real opponent too?
Yeah.
So immediately, Sigrid fights back. And Ethan's shocked by this. And in my opinion, it shows how he has never taken her very seriously. Meanwhile, she isn't hesitating to embrace who and what she is at the basis level. Quote, Sigrid leapt, a swipe of claw-tipped hands. Shock blasted through Ethan at the sight of those claws, so readily drawn. To Jack's point, you fucking moved first, sir. Later, he goes, she'd gone for his fucking eyes. Like,
yeah.
Why are you shocked? You're bigger than her.
Yeah, she's not going for your jugular. Okay?
Right.
Also, you can grow shit back.
Yeah, also true. Now, in the heat of battle, Ethan is full on judging her, and we see it through the narrative. Quote, his fist collided with Sigrid's soft belly, but she didn't go down. She twisted, elbow slamming directly into his nose. It wasn't an elegant maneuver, but it was a smart one. Okay, so you judge her for being soft because she's lived in a tank, and then you judge her for not being trained because she's lived in a tank. Okay, great. Now, Ethan is going to continue to be incredulous that Sigrid's actually trying and judges her for how she fights. Quite frankly, to me, he has instantly forgotten her reality. He saw it for a moment before the fight started, but now he lacks respect. And in some ways, I feel like this is because he expects her to do what he's doing and putting on a performance.
Yeah.
Rather than taking the fight seriously. First of all, she's essentially a child. What do you think she's going to do? Children don't understand nuance. Secondly, she's been trapped her whole life. She's told you in the last 24 hours how she doesn't want to be trapped in this situation. Maybe she's panicking right now.
I mean, like, she's been free for 48 hours.
Yeah.
Maybe 72 if I'm being generous.
Yeah, just less than a week. So I think, Ethan, you should have a little more empathy for her attempts to survive. We switch from Ethan's point of view to Tharion's, and Tharion is in a similar headspace right now. He, like Ethan, is feeling responsible for how things have turned out. It's my opinion, SJM in these chapters is trying to level the stage so she shows all the ways in which they are similar so that we can watch all the ways they will choose differently throughout the rest of this book. Earlier, in Ethan's point of view, he thought, quote, he was doing this ultimate disgrace, this betrayal of all that he was as a person, as a wolf. Had he freed Sigrid from the tank for this, only to wind up here? Meanwhile, from Tharian's point of view, something a little bit similar-esque. Quote, mired in shame, Tharian watched the bloodbath unfold before him. He deserved to be here in this place with the Viper Queen. He didn't deserve to be fought for. Again, they're going to ultimately, in my opinion, go on two different paths. They're both going to attempt to help women. It just happens that one will do it altruistically while the other one will be self-serving.
Yeah.
And the quality of the character of each of these men will be emphasized by the fact that they're starting in the same place but end up different places.
And honestly, both of them would fuck said woman. Yes, even as a Reaper. I think Ethan would.
I think he would.
So we are now back with Bryce, and we are getting tons and tons of lore with Selene because she's there like with the hologram a la Princess Leia. And things we will discuss in the breadcrumbs, but here are some main points for us to get to. The main thing here is that the truth is ugly. The past is ugly. And yet we, both like the people in Bryce's world, but also I'd argue we as in people in our world, put the past on a pedestal. Like everything is, rose-colored glasses reflected on the past. We put the historical figures on the pedestal. And that is kind of like the ongoing theme for Selene in her story, I'd say.
Yeah.
Now we're back. We're with Ruhn, Hunt, and Baxian. And in what is my opinion, the best scene in the entire book, nay, dare I say, series. Arguably her entire work. Quote,
Jack is being facetious.
I don't think I am. Quote, 2 more bites and it'll be off. Ruhn whimpered but nodded grimly. They swung into each other, legs locking tight. Why is it sexual? And Baxian gave no warning as he bit down again. Hot. Anyway,
it is sexual.
Right? Either way, it's complete comedy gold. Like, it's a comedy of errors. Like, truly, none of this needed to happen. And they did this entirely to themselves because Ruhn is a big old dum-dum who refuses to communicate with Lidia and deserves every moment of this. Baxian, though, an innocent and doesn't deserve this. Neither does Hunt. But let's look at now that we're stepping away from, the comedy of Ruhn's hand, who is now an entirely separate character that personally is mine own favorite character. Let's look at the general metaphors of losing a hand. You can look at it as like when someone's trying to steal, biblically, you would cut off their hand. Or, I want to lend you a hand. Like, there's just so many things that like a hand could represent. I think that this is Ruhn aiming for one of the worst punishments that he can give himself. And as much as like I do hate him in the dungeon and how he treats Lidia, I think he is equally punishing himself for the way that he is treating Lidia. I mean, for what he does to Lidia, he deserves to have every body part bitten off. But I think there's like a correlation here.
I think that's a really good point because we do see a lot of the characters in this section punishing themselves in some way. And so it makes sense that Ruhn, without saying so, has chosen this method of sacrifice.
Yeah.
To punish himself for the way he's treating Lidia. Because even though he has said, yes, you are dead to me, he's obviously still mad at himself.
There are people who are dead to me, and I don't care about them.
Yeah. Feelings.
Or like, rawr. It's just more like, okay, good for you. Anger is still an emotion. So Hunt is watching everything go down, and it doesn't help his general headspace. Like, he's already a sad boy. Quote, even if he had no idea how he'd face her being Bryce, again, after failing to protect them from this fate, after agreeing to let his friends do this, he had no idea how he'd look at her in the eye. Nah, I mean, it's fair. Like, being like, hey, babe, I let one friend bite your brother's hand off. But great news, it's not me. So you can still kiss me. Like, imagine like, hey, can I go down on you? Like, that would be a weird incest. Like, if he was like gnawing on Ruhn's stump just to go kiss Bryce.
Yeah,
and it doesn't matter how much time or fluids have passed. That's like a different type of like...
disgusting.
That is incest. Which is funny because there was some chemistry between them in the first book.
There was chemistry between them. Now, as I mentioned, I think nearly every character is experiencing either some level of guilt or self-punishment in this episode, because in a lot of ways, they all either feel responsible or are responsible for what is happening to someone they care about right now. I personally believe Hunt's situation and how he's eating himself up is the saddest of them all. I do also want to go back to something Jack said. Now, Jack always finds this scene of Ruhn's hand extremely humorous because it is a comedy of errors. I think I will say from a writing point of view, I could see how maybe SJM is trying to use this as a tool to convey to us as readers, like, they're losing their shit. Their situation has been so bad. This is where they're at, where they're not thinking logically. They're essentially like rats in a cage.
Yeah.
Which is what the Hawk is going to call them later. I could have used more suffering. Is that fair?
I agree. No, because it doesn't feel horrible. I mean, and we do know that SJM had it worse and her editor told her to play it down, but I can't be the only person that thinks that there's like, I don't want to say it's light, but like you have them swinging around trying to bite each other's arms off and then it's over.
Yeah, I think it's because so much of the violence happens off the page. We usually come to hunt Baxian and Ruhn after the violence has already happened, or we see it right before it happens and then right after it happens.
Yeah, like we find like Ruhn's bowels were hanging on the floor.
Exactly.
Show it to me. Show it to me. Tell me how it happens. Which falls out first?
Yeah. I wonder if that's the content that SJM got told to cut. And I think, sadly, the story kind of needed it for me to believe how, like, far gone they are at this point.
Agreed. But, you know, at the end of the day, Hunt has to get his head in the game and he's got to direct them. It's like the world's worst cuck chair, you know? You know a cuck, right? Like when your cuckold is cucked. It's a Shakespearean term. It's like when
I know the Shakespearean term, but
yeah, like when a man's wife is with someone else. So there's like a form of voyeurism when men like to watch their wives get fucked. And that's like being cucked, but sometimes it's like willing to have it happen. And then there's the ongoing joke online that every hotel has a random cuck chair.
I did not know this.
It makes sense though. And then it's kind of like, well, why is this one chair facing the bed? And it's like, because that's the cuck chair.
Got it.
Which is now me coming back saying that this is a very strange version of being cucked. I'm so happy we went through that explanation so that not just you, but everyone can understand how hilarious I am.
I mean, it makes sense in the context of Baxian and Ruhn having to lock legs in a kind of sexually explicit way.
Yeah. And Hunt's just watching and directing them, which is what a cuck does. Quote, more, Hunt barked. He'd become the Umbra Mortis, becoming that fucking monster again if it gave his friends a shot at survival. My note, this is us at the gym. But also, it's that power that a title, aka a mask, can truly give. We've seen Hunt have to dip into that mask before. And it's unfortunately a title and mask that he's not done. He's going to have to keep getting dipped into that title over and over again.
Even though he thought he retired it. And in the process of having to utilize that mask, he is simultaneously trying to remove his identity. He's not trying to cover his identity. He's trying to remove his identity in the process because he has to disassociate. That's his only known coping mechanism, a la House of Earth and Blood. Like, this is how he knows how to survive the guilt that comes with being the Umbra Mortis. Quote, again, the Umbra Mortis ordered Baxian. We're still in Hunt's point of view, and he is calling himself from afar the Umbra Mortis. I think it's important that we're seeing Hunt in the Umbra Mortis mask now because it will fail him. Like, he's struggling to keep it on, but he's got it on right now. He won't later when he needs it. It's also interesting to me that Hunt removes Baxian's identity while Baxian is chewing off Ruhn's hand. I partially think it's so that Hunt can continue to respect Baxian and who Baxian has become, meanwhile continue to resent the Hellhound because the Hellhound has its own association from Hunt's past.
I would respect you no matter what body part you had to bite off of someone else.
I mean, if you told me to bite that bitch, no. You'd still call me Amy, heaved forward, teeth clamping down and crunched instead of the Hellhound.
Amway. Armor. Like that would be my version. Irma heaved. We are now back with Ethan in the fight, and Sigrid is fighting very hard. And this is the quote that I referenced earlier. Quote, Sigrid struck a cruel, cheap lunge for his throat, designed to rip it out. I don't know how I feel about the cheap part. Actually, I do know. I don't like it. I don't like that the way that it's described for her trying to survive is considered cheap. And remember, she has basically been in a cooler her entire life. And just like literally put on ice, and anything that she can do to survive, it's not cheap. It's impressive.
Exactly. And instead, Ethan seems to be looking at it through a lens of like her lacking honor, because that's what the cheap implies, right? This isn't how battle is done. There's no honor in the way that she's done it.
When has he ever done fucking honor and fought like this? You know what I mean? Like, when was the last time he fought to the death? Other than when all of Midgard was attacked, but...
Yeah, during Earth and Blood. I don't know that he has otherwise.
Yeah, but you're telling me that you wouldn't have used a cheap shot to survive? Like, you're telling me that there was honor in those attacks?
Yeah. Now, continuing from Ethan's point of view during this fight, even though Sigrid is acting basically on pure instinct and survival, he is judging it as something else. Quote, he might have pulled her from the tank, but she was first and last an alpha, and alphas did not lose, not to lesser wolves. I really don't think Sigrid is thinking about the fact that she's an alpha and Ethan's a lesser wolf. I think that's what Ethan is thinking. Yeah, on one hand, he's projecting, and in that projection seeing himself as lesser than, but he's also once again putting responsibility onto Sigrid that she did not ask for, nor is she potentially acting upon.
Yeah.
Just because her instinct to fight does not mean it is the instinct of an alpha. Maybe she has an alpha gene in there. Maybe her attitude is like an alpha. But again, like we've been saying, she's in survival mode. Maybe she just doesn't want to be trapped.
Call her crazy. Then Ethan finally kills her. Quote, they'd punch straight through her throat, they being his claws. And his storyline is now defined, propelled, and inspired like completely around the death of this female character that he caused. Would it have impacted him as much if it was a male character? And if Sigrid didn't remind him of all the major women in his life, Danica, Bryce, Sabine. I don't like when characters' arcs are propelled by a female death. I actually blame Ethan more than I do SJM. Like, I feel like this truly is what he does, if that makes sense. Like,
yeah, it's in character for him.
It's very in character. Now, this was a long chapter. Trust me, we read it and we had to take notes and it never ended. Now, why are all three storylines in one chapter? Like the hand, the learning the truth about the other Fae, and then killing Sigrid. And I think it's because they're all experiencing a type of death of oneself. For Bryce, it's the truth of the Fae. For Hunt, it's like the death of who he was before having to experience all of that. And then Ethan, the death of himself for killing Sigrid.
I think that's a really good point, and I didn't think about it until I read your notes. I feel like to expand upon that, what's happening in this chapter, it's also the death of hope, right? Because for the guys in the dungeons, this was their hope of being able to escape. And lo and behold, not going to work out. For Bryce, it's the death of her hope for answers. For Ethan, it's his hope for the wolves and finding an alpha that could be not Sabine. It is the death of false hope in a lot of ways, which is just as painful as real hope.
Absolutely. It's just as painful sitting here
without taking a sip.
Yeah. Oh my God. Fucking Kentucky. Okay. We are in chapter 21, and SJM is great at taking lore and history of our world and using it as inspiration. And to me, one of the biggest moments was the concept of this human library that the humans built on Midgard before it was taken over. So we are back with Celine, and she's telling the story about the humans on Midgard and what they built. Quote, the marshes to the north sat a massive column building. No, a complex of several buildings. The library of Parthos. It hadn't only been a place to hold books, Bryce knew. argue me, I dare you, but not you, Amy. Just anyone and anyone who wants to argue me, good luck. This has been pre-recorded. This is inspiration from the Library of Alexandria. Now, I have to tell you, that Library of Alexandria is one of those things that you just hear always. And then in junior high, when they taught it, I was like, it was real? I was so excited because it was just like, it just seems so mythic, right?
Yeah.
Real quick. The Library of Alexandria was in Alexandria, which is in Egypt. It was one of the largest, most significant libraries in the ancient world. Alexandria came to be regarded as the capital of knowledge and learning. Many important and influential scholars worked at the library during the 3rd and 2nd century BC. The Library of Alexandria wasn't destroyed in a single event, which I always thought it did, but it wasn't, but rather disappeared over centuries. Its decline was driven by a mix of accidental fires, warfare, imperial neglect, and eventually leading to its buildings being razed or repurposed as the city's political and cultural climate shifted. Why, yes, I did pull that from Wikipedia. So happy you noticed. In case someone's like, that's not how she talks. Bitch, you thought I was going to like sum it up? No, I'm going to copy and paste that shit. But yeah, just kind of like a quick, hey guys, this is the Library of Alexandria.
And, you know, created by humans. We're capable of it. We don't have to be Fae to have knowledge.
No,
but we're good at destroying shit too.
It's really sad to think about, like, the Library of Alexandria was like this massive, incredible place that had all of these books that in BC, guys, BC, although we don't use BC, there's like another term that we're supposed to use, but like,
I think it's BCE.
Yeah, like this is way early. And to think that there were probably thousands of books there and we will never know any of it. We will never know their stories, their culture, the way that we would have if we had those books. And it's sad. It's sad thinking about that.
It's
and I think
SJM go ahead.
I just think SJM does a good job of that feeling of loss.
Yeah. And remember, she studied history in college. So she would be one to know. I think also it just speaks to like how humans take information and knowledge for granted.
Yeah.
And think that either, oh, someone else will document it or, oh, someone else will preserve that.
Yeah.
Instead
or
of
that it'll always be here. It's fine.
Yeah.
We have the internet. It'll always be here.
No.
Some of you guys very clearly didn't live it during our age, and we have a decade of photos and songs that are missing, and that was from like 2001 to 2010. And it's actually like there's a term of like the lost data years, where it's like all these songs, all of these photos that we put on our computer, and then there was like no backup, and then it's just like on our one old computer from 2005.
Yeah, I do have multiple hard drives with my backups of all my computers since 2002.
Oof, good job. Now, this is where we find out about the parasite in the water and how they drank it. Very similar to me discovering about the parasite in the food in Kentucky and California. And not hasn't reached California yet. It's the one that gives everyone the crazy shits. Anyway, so the parasite lowers their power because, quote, with one sip of water from this world we belong to the Asteri, there was no undoing it. We're just wondering, since Rhys is a descendant of Selene and everyone, does that mean that some of their power has not been fully unlocked?
Yeah, I've thought about this, and it's a great question because it's either a plot hole or she has not fully explained it. And the only way I can explain it in my brain is that maybe Selene, even though she drank the water, she already had full access to her power before she drank the water of Midgard. And so maybe the power only impacts those who are born by parents who've consumed the water, and they continue to consume the waters themselves. And why I think this is because I think in Earth and Blood, the Autumn King says specifically the Fae are getting weaker with each generation. And so it seems to be a generational thing. So maybe since Selene's husband and children would never have consumed the water of Midgard, maybe
it like trickled out eventually.
Yeah. Like it maybe it like weaned out any way she was impacted.
I wouldn't be surprised if this ends up being a thing later where it's like this one kernel of full power can be unlocked. Like if this is like this one dormant cell that has been there the entire time.
Yeah. Interesting. It's not a bad point because SJM will use any loose threads she can find if it's convenient for her.
Oh, she's great at it.
She is very good at it. Also, I just want to point it out as a food as power thing that, yes, we might cringe at the idea of the inclusion of a parasite in House of Flame and Shadow. I know I did during my first read. I think a lot of people did. However, from a symbolic point of view, this is fantastic from a food as power perspective. Life cannot live without water. Nothing can live without water. And yet the water source is the one thing that will kill them. And that is the ultimate form of power. And that says, symbolically, that's pretty impressive for the Asteri.
Absolutely. Now, we start to get a lot of lore about Thea and really how bad she really was. They're all horrible. But Daddy, I can change him. And Thea does supposedly, allegedly become a better person. Quote, and when this war was over, she promised we would go to hell with Adis, not to rule, but to live. When this was over, she promised she would spend the rest of her existence atoning. Can someone really atone for their bad of that level? I mean, and I don't want to dismiss it and say, don't even try, because someone should try. But as the story progresses and the way that they don't care about saving people, it is just the most empty promise of I promise I'll atone later.
Yeah, what does atonement look like when the people you need to atone to are no longer alive?
Yeah. I mean, to me, it's anyone who is a neo-Nazi, is incredibly racist, is homophobic, is any phobic of any kind, right? Or ist of any kind. And if someone is actively hating and doing bad, I don't want to shut them out and say you can't be redeemed. But to also think that the damage hasn't been done is just, it's silly.
Yeah, I agree.
So during the war, we find out that Peleus and Helena didn't actually fall in love the way that the propaganda that the Asteri gave everyone said that they did. Quote, Peleus would use us to legitimize his reign. He meant to father children on us. Damn. Okay, father children on us sounds like he is willing and ready to get them all pregnant, Thea included. And this is rape. And this is forcing women to carry a child as a form of control. And that is something that men do in this world as well.
Yes, Jack just educated me on this in California recently, that women can't divorce husbands if they're pregnant in California.
They can't immediately divorce. So in California, you can file for a divorce. However, a judge cannot finalize a divorce until the baby is born.
So wild to me. What does that have to do with anything?
It's a form of control.
It is a form of control. And to your point, the quote, he meant to father children on us, the phrasing itself feels violating because there's an inherent lack of consent. We don't get a choice in the matter. He is going to force us to have children.
Yeah.
And it's disgusting.
The imagery of Celine's escape is very great, and it's a reminder that SJM is flexing, and every time that SJM flex her writing muscles is just another minute longer we have to read, honestly. Amy had to look away.
Yeah.
Am I wrong? Because I'm just
no, you're not.
Shit, I have to reread the sentence. Did I miss something? Here's just an example. Quote, towards the snow-crested peak ahead, a natural archway of stone, a gateway. People might be like, that's not fancy. Trust me, the whole scene was fancy. But we've always talked about it, the power of a threshold. Is this very on the nose? And we're saying, hey, this threshold, this peak is archway is a gateway? Yes. However, symbolism, sometimes it's spot on.
Doesn't make it bad.
It doesn't make it bad. I was about to be like, Amy's as pretty as a dove, okay? Is it cheesy? Maybe. But is she a dove? Yes. Is she pretty? Yes. And then I was like, why a dove? You don't look like a dove.
Yeah, I don't know either.
But the point stands, okay?
Is it because I'm wearing white?
Maybe? I don't know. I think it's because I'm in 80% humidity and
your brain is dying.
There's no hope here. This is a lost state. I think we just give it up and try again somewhere else. Somewhere where there's not this much humidity. And I know people are going to be like, that's most of the United States. Okay. If we got to give it up, we got to give it up. I think you guys just don't know what it's like to live in California. It's nice. Okay, so Celine is back home and alone and tries to figure out how to make up for the bad. And then she's like, oh my God, I have a great way on how to make up for the sins of my family. And the best way to do that is for everyone to not know about what we did. The fuck? Quote, they would have become a story whispered around campfires about people who had vanished. It was the only thing I could think to do to protect this world, to atone. Okay, so I get what she's saying. She's like, if no one knows that this is an option, then no one will try to do this evil thing. However, I don't think that this is atoning when you're trying to make yourself look good and look better. The best way that I can say is like, look at the way that some people in the South try to cover up like what happened during the Civil War and some of the absolutely disgusting atrocities that happened. And, you know, I'm not saying that like Germany has it right, but they have museums of what they did during the Holocaust. And it's like, you can't just forget it.
Right. You have to acknowledge it so that you don't repeat it.
Yeah.
I completely agree. And Bryce is also on the same page. Quote, Celine would have benefited from hiding her past. If she didn't tell anyone who she was or what she and her family had done, she couldn't be punished for it. How convenient. How noble. Quite frankly, I think Bryce's anger toward Celine is very similar to Ruhn's anger toward Lidia right now.
You're right, except one's justified.
Yes, but I'm just saying.
You're right. You're right.
I
like,
agree.
This is how Ruhn should be with moral. Like,
yeah. I mean, Ruhn is angry like Bryce is angry, but he thinks his anger is justified because he refuses to acknowledge the good that Lidia has also done.
Yeah, it's hard because it's like, how can anyone sit here and think like, well, what was the good that Thea did? Nothing. I mean, she got the Asteri out of Prythian. Hurrah. And then like, but they just also condemned another world to the Asteri. You know, they didn't kill them. They got rid of them. What I find interesting is how Celine also decides to move forward, right? Not only is she forgetting everything and doesn't want anyone to remember, but she doesn't want to be High Lady and be tempted with power. She then goes on to talk about the legacy that she is leaving behind and how she is going to tell her kids. But rather than saying she's going to tell her kids, she says, quote, one day he has promised to tell his son and his son after him. So she's talking about her sons, her son and then their sons. It's only sons. She is not saying tell their kids. She is only talking about men. And I feel like there's this now ingrained misogyny that she has instilled within herself of women can't be leaders because there's this nature of her damning women as punishment as well for her mother's crimes.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, and I think it came up in our previous episode, Thea's former husband, Finn, didn't want Thea to inherit his crown or his power because he didn't feel like she was fit. And Celine didn't necessarily cast judgment on that at the time, but now we can see without her saying it, she must agree to some level because she's not allowing herself to be in a position of power and she's not allowing any women or female descendants in her bloodline to know the truth of her power.
We also see Celine abusing her own power, and it's a different type of power. Quote, as an elder, I spun lies for my people and called them the truth. If knowledge is power, she is doing one of the most egregious abuse of power that we are seeing in this world.
But more of that.
More of a sip, shall we?
We now move into chapter 22, and Rigelus has entered the dungeon. He comes to visit Hunt, Ruhn, and Baxian with Pollux and the hawk in tow, just as Ruhn's hand has come off. The hawk mocks them. Quote, just like a rat, the hawk taunted, gnawing off a limb when caught in a trap. Now, the taunting is the cherry on top of an already very debasing situation, kind of going back to one of my earlier comments. Hunt, Ruhn, and Baxian have been hung up like animals in a butcher's freezer. They're covered in their own excrement and blood. They've endured hours of torture. And in a lot of ways, they've sunk below their own humanity in an effort to survive. Now, I know that this is all psychological warfare. I know we're supposed to be convinced it's working. Doesn't quite feel like it for me. We've already talked about that. But to exacerbate the circumstance, Rigelus is effectively in the exact opposite situation, and it kind of is rubbing salt in the wound. Quote, yet Rigelus stepped closer to Hunt, immaculate white jacket, almost obscenely clean in this place. Just to remind them, Hunt especially, how disgusting and low and debased that they have become.
I've got friends in low places.
Now, despite Hunt's best efforts to not become prey to Regulus's whims or demands, and despite his best intention to be the Umbra Mortis so that he can survive the dungeons, Hunt is not able to keep the mask on. Despite Regulus's attempts to strike a bargain, Hunt instinctively resists. Quote, "No." The word rose from deep in Hunt's gut. Regulus's expression remained mild. "Then choose which one of your friends shall die." "Go to hell." The Umbra Mortis slipped away, too far to reach. Hunt can't not be himself right now because he is too attached to Baxian and to Ruhn. And I think Hunt feels shame that he can't keep the Umbra Mortis mask on, not only because Ruhn and Baxian have asked him to, but because it also shows Hunt's weakness in the process and the fact that he does care what happens to Ruhn and Baxian, which means Regulus will just continue to use them against him. He laments this whole fact later on. Quote, "Last time he'd been here, he'd been alone. He'd had only the screams of soldiers to endure. His guilt had devoured him, but it was different than this, than having to be here with two brothers and bearing their suffering along with his own. Being alone would have been better, so much better." And I do think that this is the point that breaks Hunt in a lot of ways. That puts him so at odds with Bryce when they're reunited, because he had to endure this. Bryce did not have to endure this.
Yeah. I just also feel like there's one of those things where it's like, I think you don't just automatically say, fuck you, no, to Righteous. Like, just think it through a little bit. Unless it's information, just hear him out what he wants, because he's probably going to get it anyway.
Yeah. But once again, they're so far gone.
Yeah. No strategy in those heads. I mean, there is never a strategy to begin with, so. Pollux and the Hawk are enjoying seeing what Ruhn and co are up to, and then Lidia joins them, and she's horrified, but needs to keep a cool face and take control of the situation because she's got shit to do. She decides that Hunt and Baxian need their wings to start to grow back, just so that they can torture them more. And even though it's her idea, Pollux exerts control over her idea. Quote, "Pollux smiled. Clever, Lidia." He jerked his chin towards the unconscious angels. "Do it." She didn't need the hammer's permission, but she didn't protest. It's just more examples of Pollux trying to, just exert control at every given fucking moment. And she describes Pollux and the Hawk like the Malleus's eyes gleamed with naked lust. I thought it was an interesting use of the word Malleus, where I was like, am I reading this incorrectly? Because Malleus means it's a part of the bone, right?
Yeah, it's Latin for hammer.
And my mom had a bone injury, so I'm familiar because I think it's close to the hip.
It's actually in the ear.
Okay, I was wrong.
Sorry.
What am I thinking?
It is Latin for hammer, but I also do think it's interesting that it is a small bone in the ear, because there's a small bone that's the hammer and there's the small bone that's the anvil, essentially. And yeah, they're pretty important for you to hear, but they're also very weak and fragile and able to break easily. Kind of like Pollux's toxic masculinity. That was my joke. Okay, moving on.
No, I laughed, but I had to mute myself because I think those are cicadas and they were getting really loud. What the fuck, guys? What the Kentucky? And I have to keep the window open because it's so hot, but I might have to close it if these fuckers keep... Can you hear that?
Yeah.
So Lidia then basically has to kick the boys out, reminding them who is in charge. And Pollux doesn't like the reminder because, again, she's like, I outrank these bitches. Quote, "The hammer, however, walked over to her. With a lover's gentleness, he put a hand on the side of her neck and then squeezed tight enough to bruise as he said against her mouth, 'I'll fuck that disrespect out of you, Lidia, bloody cunt or not.'" Shit. Straight up hey, he's going to rape her. He's saying that that's what he's going to do and hurt her regardless of whether she's on her period, which talk about what a disgusting way of describing it. And I just really want to emphasize that the last interaction here before she's about to talk to Ruhn is getting threatened, and not even a threat. This is a promise. This is Pollux. She is sleeping in the same room as him, living in the same space. She knows that that's going to come back and hurt her. She knows what that's going to do. Just keep that in mind. Because right after Pollux leaves, after he promises/threatens rape, and she kicks him out, she then lets Ruhn down from the chains and he kind of falls onto the floor. Quote, "She scanned his face. 'Ruhn,' no one answered. as if pain had carved him up and hollowed him out. Ruhn, listen to me. You're dead to me, he said. It seemed he'd killed the connection between them two, but Lidia still cast her thoughts towards his mind. I get it. I get that he's lashing out at her. I get that he wants her to hurt the way that he hurts, and that maybe she even represents the torture that he's enduring at this point, right? But what the fuck?
So I read this scene like you read it, which is "you're dead to me" being said in real time. But after I reread it, I think it's actually her remembering what he said on the mental bridge when he tells her about Apollyon, because he's technically unconscious right now.
Okay. All right. That would make me feel better if he's not saying that to her immediately after. This is one of those, like, when it's written in past tense and they're reflecting on past tense moments. It gets messy.
Yeah, because it's "you're dead to me," he had said. It seemed he had killed the connection between them two. But with the contractions, it does get confusing. And I definitely read it as happening in real time the first time I read it.
That makes me feel better. Back with Bryce, after finding out the truth about their ancestors, I'm a little surprised with Az, because I'm not saying he's trying to justify, but it's a little justification. This is talking about Thea, Selene, and Helena's actions. Quote, surely their fates at Peleus's hands, Azrael said, would explain some of their motivations in acting quickly. Now, acting quickly is abandoning everyone and leaving everyone to die at the hands of the Asteri. And this is women and children and men and everyone. It's not a casual action. It's thousands or hundreds, many deaths, we can say.
Yeah, I definitely think Azrael is looking at it through a very narrow lens, right? I wonder if instinctually he's empathetic to the idea of someone being trapped and used for someone else's enjoyment, right? Because that was his experience. I wonder if that's his mom's experience. Think about Gwyn. He saved Gwyn from a situation of sexual violence.
Yeah.
It also makes me think of Rhys and Amarantha, but you're not wrong.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, I absolutely would not want a woman to be assaulted and forced to carry her rapist child. Mass genocide is also the other hand of that.
Right,
I'm not saying that's what they should have signed up for, but it was just an interesting comment from Az, and I think you say it. He's trying to find nuance, and I think that this is a hard situation to find nuance in.
Yeah, it is a hard situation. I think this whole thing as well, and you're going to get into this in a moment, is the fact that we're really seeing Nesta and Azrael in a different light. I think because it's through Bryce's eyes, this comment also is really off-putting because we're getting it from Bryce's point of view.
And in Bryce's point of view, she is absolutely horrified and there's no justification, right? And, maybe if we were in Azrael's eyes from the get-go, we would find some kind of empathy there. So Bryce is definitely swaying the way that the reader is reading this. And like you said, Nesta and Azrael are saying and doing things that is that really Nesta and Azrael? Yes, it is. But as the situation becomes clear and it becomes more obvious that this whole thing is not just dangerous for Bryce and her world, but a very real danger for Prythian, Nesta and Azrael do become crueler, and they try to get Bryce to leave with them. They're like, hey, we should go. And she was like, the fuck, quote, to do what? Lock me up? Cut the horn out of my skin? If that's what's necessary, Nesta said coolly, knees bending, readying to strike. If that's what it takes to keep our world safe. Okay, first off, horrible captor skills. You don't say that. You don't say we're going to carve that thing out of your back. You just say, no, we're going to get out of here. Let's recalibrate. Let's reorientate ourselves. Yeah. I love a cup of tea. We can't, there's nothing we can't solve without a cup of tea and a hot meal. Girl, have you had a bath yet? Let's talk. You kind of smell. Face masks, right? I have a house. It can give you anything you want. If you just imagine. This isn't the way to capture people.
Exactly. This whole scene reminds me of Silver Flames and the way people reacted to seeing Rhys through Nesta's eyes. We are seeing Nesta, Azrael, the inner circle, through Bryce's eyes, and she is not part of the inner circle. She doesn't know the context. She doesn't know the people. She doesn't know their tells. Wonder Does the rest of Prithian see the inner circle the way that Bryce sees the inner circle right now?
Does Tamlin? Is Tamlin mildly justified? I'm not saying justified, but I think that's a great fucking question because we do know for a fact that they do because the Night Court has this big scary persona and this is where it comes from.
And this is their big scary persona.
Mm-hmm.
And Azriel is painted as the predator. We know this for a fact, but we've never been on the receiving end. Right? Because we have seen him through the eyes of Feyre, Nesta, Cassian. They have not been on the receiving end of Azriel as an assassin. Quote, Azriel's hazel eyes flickered with predatory intent. He'd carve it out of her fucking back. He began circling her with an unhurried, calculating precision. Bryce turned with him, keeping him in sight, but doing so exposed her back to Nesta, who she suspected might be the apex predator in the room. It's like Jurassic Park all over again with the velociraptors. Yeah. Sorry, I recently watched it. So giving me very much Velociraptor vibes right now. Remember also, Bryce is the only one who's still partly human in the room. This is the way she has grown up with Veneer. It's natural for her to be afraid of them. I genuinely wonder, would Feyre have felt this way about Azriel if they had met before Feyre was Fae?
Yeah.
While she was still human.
I would love to be on the receiving side of Azriel's intent of any kind. However, it is like we have only ever viewed him in very forgiving circumstances and forgiving light. So
even when he's tortured people.
Even when he's tortured people, we're like, but he's a tortured soul, so it's okay.
Exactly.
Daddy, I can fix him.
So at this point, Bryce, Nesta, and Azriel get into a fight because Azriel's trying to leave to get away to call for help from Rhys. Bryce is trying to prevent that. And in doing all of this, Bryce senses Celene's power in the stone and deduces that's where it is. And I do find the language SJM uses around this moment to be interesting because it does mirror language we normally associate with some of the Archeron sisters. For example, quote, the 8-pointed star at her feet glimmered, as if her magic had nudged something within it, like embers flaring in stirred ashes. Sounds like Nesta to me. Nesta's power. Embers, fire, etc. And then there's some other language once she begins to hold on to that power that I think is associated with Feyre. Quote, the power ascended toward her through the stone, like a glimmering arrow fired in the dark. So I'm just pointing it out. I don't know if it's intentional, but at SJM, things are always intentional. Speaking of more intention, just like many of the heroines in SJM's novels, imagery of a wolf is associated with Bryce during this scene as she comes into her power. Because as she's stopping Azriel from leaving the room, she makes the stone of the prison move and, quote, the room became a wolf, its jaws snapping for the winged warrior. Again, Feyre and her water wolves in Mist and Fury. Nesta's been a wolf her entire life.
Yep. So I'll take a sip. Let's take a sip. We are now in chapter 23, and Lidia gets Erithis, the Sprite Queen, out and tells her her plan. Quote, I can explain later. Right now, I only have, she choked on the word, trust to offer. This is something that Ruhn didn't want from her. Like, Lidia has literally nothing to give anyone. She does not have her honor, her name, her word. The only thing she can offer anyone is saying, can you just trust me? And the one person that she needed it from, Ruhn, didn't trust her. And now she needs it from the queen. So, girls supporting girls.
Yeah, and it makes sense that she's hesitant, that she's worried Erithis will turn her away. But luckily for us, call back to episode 2, Erithis turns ruby in color. And as we pointed out in episode 2, Lydia's family ring also contains a ruby. And it reminds us that Erithis and Lidia are mirrors of one another. As Lidia tells Erithis why she needs the queen's help, quote, surprise lit Erithis' face, but she nodded slowly, turning a determined hue of ruby. And that's because the Sprite Queen is realizing they're on the same team.
Lydia manipulates Hildy by saying she won't hurt her. Quote, I swear on Luna's golden bow that I shall not kill you. I just love that Luna's the goddess of her choice. I mean, it makes sense for many reasons, the goddess of the hunt, but there's just kind of like, it just makes sense for her,
Yeah, it also, like, Luna is the Fae's god. Does Lydia know deep down that she is her family or Fae? Because she's technically a shifter.
Yeah. I think it's one of those moments where she's just drawn to it, you know?
Yeah, that's fair.
Hildy takes the crown off of Erythes, quote, like black rain, it sliced down the flaming blue body, dripping it to the stone below. It's tainting the flames as it leaves, like it's not staying on her flames, but it is going through. And the fact that she's now blue, I understand how temperature works, guys. I understand how, flames are different colors. However, blue, anxious, sad, potentially, just a lot of anxiety of, is this going to work? Is she actually going to free me? Do I actually get to be free? And once the crown is gone and Erythes' power is free, quote, and in its wake, as it cleared, the sprite began to blaze a blinding white. Now, white is the highest temperature a flame can be. And now it's also very purifying. It's showing that there is no dark halo, no ring around her. And this is time for her to get some revenge.
And get her revenge she does, because Lidia said Lidia would not kill Hildy. Didn't mean Erythes wouldn't. Now, Erythes stays white as Lidia asks, can I trust you to burn me and not kill me so that my plan will work? And, quote, Erythes began to glow white again. White hot. You don't have any other choice now, do you? Now, this might come across as threatening since Erythes is in her full power and is obviously capable of burning someone to ashes instantly. But Lidia doesn't seem to be intimidated. She's like, well, I don't really have a choice. But also, I think she sees the cunning in the Sprite Queen. She sees the inherent morality of the Sprite Queen and knows deep down that they have a lot in common. They view the world through a certain lens that is the same.
Yeah.
And so even though white could be an avenging angel, it can also be viewed as good. Not always the case in Flame and Shadow, but for Erythes, I think it is a holy avenging angel of good.
Yeah. I mean, and the only thing they can offer each other is trust, right? This whole entire thing only works if they both trust each other.
Yeah. In that way, they're on equal footing.
Yeah. We are back with Bryce because, we're just keep going back and forth. And this is when she finally taps into Celine's power. Quote, the power she'd siphoned from this place, from Celine herself, thrummed through her body, familiar yet foreign. And she's still not 100% though, right? Because of the parasite. From what I understand, you talked about the bloodline eventually kind of trickling out. But okay, I know what you're going to say. But even when she gets all of the powers, it's still all been parasited.
Yeah. So here's my thought on this. Again, I don't know that this is accurate, but this is the logic if I was the author, how I would logic it. Celine was 100% her own power before she went to Midgard. And the parasite doesn't take that away necessarily. It prevents someone from coming into their full power. I don't know. So let's argue for the sake of arguing. Celine's power is 100% undiluted. Technically, Bryce has inside her, before getting Celine's power, is Helena's power, right? Because that was passed down through the bloodlines. Because that was passed down through the bloodlines, it was diluted over time. So my feeling is the Helena part is small and weak, but the Celine part is not.
Probably.
Because it came directly from the source. And that's why she's able to use a laser feature.
Yeah. Well, we do know that the laser pointer, and there's the cat that jumps in there and goes, meow. Well, we do know at the end of the book, they are trying to get her to have the antidote to open up some more of her powers. Even when she's powered up with all 3 power, she's still got some more power to go. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think if nothing else, it's the Helena part of the power.
I think that makes sense.
That is not 100%. Yeah. And that's what the antidote would fix. That's my...
Thank you for making something make sense that is still debatable, but at least you're finding threads of sense.
I'm trying to.
You're doing it. Quick sip.
Sure.
We are in chapter 24, and we are in Therion's point of view, and the boys are walking past the meat market, and they see the water, and this is after, the kill, and they're just like, okay, I guess you're allowed to leave, and Therion looks at the water, quote, Therion shut down the demand, the longing, kept moving towards the sedan, one foot in front of the other. It's a lot of self-punishment here.
Exactly. He doesn't feel like he deserves to be free, especially now that Ethan has killed Sigrid. And so the self-punishment ensues because he believes that's what he deserves, that by causing himself pain, aka by denying himself access to the Istros and the magic that he needs to survive, then that's his version of atoning. And in a lot of ways, it's also the denial of his identity. That atonement is equal to I cannot be my truest self, my thriving self. And in a lot of ways, Therian just has no identity anymore because in his mind, he doesn't deserve one.
Yeah. The sprites, though, the amazing little badasses they are, burn down the whole thing. Quote, Therian could only gape as Milana pointed through the rear window to where flames were now licking the night sky above the meat market. I think it's significant, and it's also kind of like a beautiful metaphor of burning and purging, very similar to what we just saw with Erithis.
I completely agree. I also would just want to point out that these assholes forgot about the sprites.
Yeah.
Like, they got in the car and started driving away, essentially.
I think Mark or Flynn, whoever was in there, started rolling down the window. So I think like one of them remembered, hopefully. But yeah, no,
They ran into
suck.
the windshield.
Did they?
Yeah, like it says 3 lights ran into the windshield. Oh, they forgot about the sprites. Yeah, they never think about women.
No, they hate women. They really do.
They really do.
Okay, so now we're back with Bryce, and they are all, her, Nesta, and Azriel are all facing the Asteri, but Bryce needs answers. So she gets a bit messy, and she is driven by emotions at this point. Quote, but time pressed down on her. With every minute Hunt suffered, she was sure of it. This is the first time, at least in this book, that we are seeing emotions and worry really dictate her actions. And I don't think that it's coming out of nowhere. I think that Bryce has done a good job suppressing that side of her because she kept being like, I can't think about it. I can't go there. And now she's thought about it and she's going there. And it's not great.
Yep, I agree. Now, Bryce, in her desperation, lets the Asteri, who we learn is Vesperus, out of her sarcophagus. And the chapter ends with the sound of thunder. Quote, a click, loud as thunder, and the lid unlocked. There's going to be more thunder and lightning references in later chapters while Bryce fights Vesperus. And in some ways, I thought about this, like, because we know Bryce needs to be charged up by Hunt to fight. Now she's charged up with Celine's light. Is she now powerful enough, or is she thinking about Hunt enough that she's calling on his power, his assistance? Like, is Hunt there with her in spirit? And is that why Estriam is using this language?
Yeah. Now the battle continues into chapter 25, and Bryce lets the Asteri out. Quote, Bryce twisted to the coffin in time to see the Asteri slowly climb out like a hatching spider. Ew. Ew. That's such a great description.
And I have a breadcrumb comment for this, so stick around for next episode.
Amazing. I don't know. This is so pointless, but it made me laugh out loud because Vesperus was like, you don't realize, like, I've been ready to kill you for 15,000 years or something like that. And then, or your friends don't realize that. And then Bryce says, quote, they don't realize you haven't fed in thousands of years and I can kick your ass. We realize it, Nesta muttered. Like, it's just kind of, I love that moment of like, you idiot. I fucking heard the story the same way you heard the story.
Yeah.
Jackass. Yeah. The whole concept of the Asteri and Thea is so interesting to me. And I feel like this just one line brings out a lot more dynamic and depth to Thea than we did throughout Celine's whole story. Quote, wars broke out between the various beings of our world. Some of us saw the... Oh, no. Okay. Never mind. So everything I just said holds true, but it's not to this quote. So this quote in particular is just more... It does add more layers to Thea, but not the one that I'm excited to talk about. So this quote, though, quote, wars broke out between the various beings on our world. Some of us saw the changes in the land beginning. Rivers run dry, clouds so thick the sun could not pierce them and left. So this is the Asteri talking about their original planet and why they left. And I just feel like this whole entire book series is just SJM being very vocal about anti-war, climate change, discussing climate change, anti-colonization. Like, I just think that it's hard to read this and not be like, she got opinions.
Yeah, I completely agree because this whole sequence is Bryce and the reader judging the attitude of the Asteri in front of them. Like, it's so obvious Vesperus's mindset is being critiqued. And that critique ultimately is, okay, you wasted your own planet, and instead of fixing it and being responsible, you went and colonized someone else.
Yeah.
Quote, so you trashed your planet that went to feed off others. And Vesperus's response, we had to find sustenance from an eco-criticism lens, which is, looking at how this reflects our world, especially in terms of climate. It feels very obvious that it's a critique of how we treat our own world. Just think,
Absolutely.
this was before AI data centers. Think about like that.
Did you see that local people in LA were able to get a data center shut down planning? It was going to be by LAX. Yeah.
Oh, that's good to hear.
All right. I want everyone to know that I'm suffering more because I just had to close the windows entirely because now the crickets are loud. Like, what in the nature? Ew. Okay, so this is the bit of information about Thea that I find to be very interesting. The Asteri drops this tidbit, and it really did change the way that I looked at Thea. Quote, "It would have been a mercy to kill me. Thea did not understand the word. I raised her from childhood not to." I didn't realize that Thea was raised by this Asteri, and I think that it just gives different context to her story. That's all.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Like, I don't know how I missed this detail in the past, and I know it's one sentence in a long diatribe, so it's probably easy to miss. It does make Thea's desire to move to hell with Adis and atone more palatable.
Yeah.
Because in theory, everything she's done is a learned behavior, and it took meeting Adis to recognize that, the way I was brought up is wrong, as someone who was raised up in a high control conservative religion, not the same, but I get it, of just like being like, oh, the way I've been conditioned is not the way the rest of the world operates. Okay.
You're saying not the same, but what I'm seeing are people who put themselves at a godlike figure and as a
so maybe
leader
it
of
is the
some
same.
kind of I'm just saying. I think if we want to dig in, there's some reflection there. Yeah, I think when you have that context, it starts to make me think, okay, well, then did her first husband have a point about not letting her have power if she was raised by the Asteri? How did she raise her daughters then?
Yep.
If she was raised by the Asteri? Like, what tragic shit did she carry on to them?
Yep. And why didn't Asteri raise a Fae? I really do want to learn more. I hope we get more backstory at some point, but I have some theories that I have in the breadcrumbs. Now, I do appreciate, again, looking from the author lens, but I do feel like SJM is like full on criticizing people in power.
Yeah, it is
through this conversation. Because Vespers says, quote, "Does it matter that we take a little of your power? What would you even do with it? It matters that we're lied to," Bryce said, "that our power is not yours for the taking, that your supremacy is unchecked and unearned. There's a natural order to the universe, girl. The strong rule the weak, and the weak benefit from it. Everything in nature preys and is preyed upon." This is just rich from a Marxist lens if you think about power and who's in control and the ultimate supreme beings being convinced that everyone benefits because they are in control, no matter what they do. Vespers ends her justification with, quote, "We are superior beings. We do not need to justify anything." Sounds a lot like a lot of oligarchs we happen to be aware of in this world.
Yeah, SJM, we know, puts a little bit of herself in these books. If you were to tell me that she was kind of going through this crisis of realizing how corrupt governments are and how privileged your life is and how much, you might have been protected, but others haven't, and in actuality, you're not being protected at all, it speaks volumes. So
yeah,
the Asteri asks Bryce, quote, "Is life so unbearable under our rule that you must always defy us?" Yes? No? For Bryce, life had been fine. Shitty in spots, but fine. But for so many others, this is straight up addressing privilege and the fact that you need to fight even when it doesn't directly benefit you.
Yeah, or you're benefiting from the system.
We are now in chapter 26, and Ethan is in a depressive spiral again. That's who he is. I don't know why I even start with that. Ethan is existing, and it's just him realizing that he's a horrible person. Quote, "He was no better than the hind." All right, insulting, but it's also funny because, the irony, not even funny, but the irony is that she's a way better person than he ever is.
Also, he knows that she's trying to save Ruhn, so why is he shitting on her?
Why not say Pollux? Why does he have to bring in a woman into this? Why does he have to compare himself to a shitty woman who, like you said, knows is trying to save Ruhn? Pollux is right there. The hawk, the Asteri. Instead, he has to compare himself to a woman and bring her down to do it.
Anyway, let's go back to Bryce. She instinctively takes the Star Sword and Truth Teller through the Force, as one does, because that's what she saw Thea do in Celine's vision. And in this moment, we get another hint of lightning when she has both in her hands. Quote, her body began to hum, like having one blade in each hand. The Star Sword and Truth Teller electrified her. Okay, I know it's not lightning. However, electricity was originally found and discovered through the use of lightning. All I'm saying is, again, feeling like Hunt is present, even though he's not necessarily there to charge her up. Quote, magic like lightning surged through her from her. The chamber rippled, a muffled boom echoing through Bryce. It's as if she's channeling Hunt because she needs him to be her best. I also think maybe it's a breadcrumb for the fact that Hunt's and his lightning were specifically made for Bryce. Like the fact that her magic feels like lightning must be intentional. I do find it interesting that as Bryce is stabbing Vesperus with both sword and dagger, time begins to slow. Because we've never seen time slow in Prythian. And it makes me wonder, is it truly the only time we've seen time slow in Prythian? Is only Bryce experiencing the slowness? Because we've never seen it with anybody else. Not when Nesta killed the King of Hybern or any of the queens. So is this a solitary experience? Is this an experience everyone's having? I don't know. However, let's also reflect on the fact that this is mirroring Micah and his death from House of Earth and Blood. Quote, no, that was time slowing, rippling, as it had with Micah, as if the blades were killing the Asteri, a great world power. I like that this is a reflection of Bryce killing Micah because it also foreshadows the way the end of the book is going to mirror Micah's death in the final battle. So just a nice little Easter egg for later.
I love how Nesta's the one who kills the Asteri. Quote, when Ataraxia's severed flesh and bone, dark blood, or whatever flowed in an Asteri's veins, sprain, Vesperus's dark head tumbled to the stone. And then, like, Nesta just stabs it a bunch of times.
Yeah.
Yep. It's just like her killing the King of Hybern. And I'm like, I wonder if that's going to bring back some memories. I wonder if she goes going to go have some nightmares about it.
Good point. Or it was therapeutic.
Or who knows? Maybe it's like, oof, I can do this again.
Yeah.
Back with Ethan and his dumbness, he decides to leave because that is literally the only thing he is capable of. Like, he is not capable of staying in a single fucking place. Quote, the wolf turned, sprinted down the dock, back towards the arid countryside, golden in the rising light. Flynn bellowed, Holstrom, what the fuck? I hate Ethan. I hate him.
I found this scene interesting because this isn't the only reference to the rising light. Earlier on in the scene, Ethan's looking at or moving towards the rising light, and I wondered what it was symbolic of, and I'll read the other quote that uses it. Quote, Therian glanced to Ethan, but the wolf was staring at the eastern horizon, the rising sun. If SJM's trying to symbolize him staring at the rising light for the wolves and he runs into the sun because he's the rising light for the wolves,
it's not working.
I want to puke a little. Yeah. I had a thought earlier about a comparison between Ethan and Therian, but I can't remember it. So I will see if I can remember it for a future episode.
I mean, this is where their paths deviate. Like, this is the moment where Ethan, like, both of them are mirrors and everything. And, you know, like you mentioned earlier, SJM does a lot of setup to make them very comparable to one another. Go ahead.
Yeah. I think I just remembered what my thought was. Therian willingly lets go of his identity and his dreams and anything he assumes is right for him because he doesn't feel like he deserves it. Whereas Ethan is showing in this moment, like, he can't let go of the past. He can't let go of his identity as a wolf, of what he thinks is right for the wolves. And because he's not willing to let go is part of why I think he is not being altruistic when he tries to raise Sigrid. It's totally self-serving, where Therion has let go of everything and ultimately only does things in service of good.
I mean, great fucking point. Literally anything that Ethan does is because he can't let go of something. His brother dying, Sigrid, like it all comes back to that. And I would also like to point out, he didn't let go of the fact of Bryce not being with his brother. And slut shaming her and harassing her for years. That doesn't just go away. You are who you are. If you're the kind of person who does that, you're a shit person. Okay, so now we're in chapter 27 and we're with Bryce, and we stay with Bryce, luckily, in this chapter, and they kill the Asteri. Now, Nesta and Az start coming for Bryce, and Bryce, understandably, is like pretty mad that they killed the Asteri, quote. And Nesta's like, girl, quote, you're looking for ways to kill the Daglin? Well, I just killed that monster, Nesta said. Isn't that an answer enough? No, Bryce said. You only left me with more questions. Okay, it's like a good point, Nesta. Like, actually, she did show that you can just stab them a bunch. And, you know, it just, I don't know. I was like, she makes good points. However, like, yes, being tortured would suck. And they make it very clear that they would go and torture her for information. Azriel flat out says, yeah, I'll do it. And Bryce then uses her own magic to create a laser pointer. And like, I forever call it a laser pointer now. Thank you. Quote, she'd created out of pure magic. The other parts of her cringed from it, from the power that was eerily similar to what Rigulus had used against her. It's a good reminder that we're not always all that different from the people that we consider or deem to be bad. Like the bad guys, we may not be all that much better from them. Bryce leaves. She opens up like a little portal for her, and her parting words with Nesta, quote, you're as much as a monster as they are, Nesta accused. Bryce knew. She'd always known. Love will do that to you. And that's where it's like, are either of them completely wrong? And we'll get into that more in part 2, but I think this has been like a great first section of like what is right, what is wrong.
Yeah. And I think that's a nice lead into our question for this week and conversation that I want to continue to have with you. But as a quick reminder, does part 1, or the drop, as it is called, of House of Flame and Shadow sufficiently set us up for the rest of the novel, aka have we had enough time in Prythian?
Spiritually, no. Realistically, yes. I don't think we were ever going to have enough time in Prythian. I don't think we were ever going to have enough scenes in Prythian. I think we were horrifically blocked. I think that we were denied, and it was cruel. And I think that it was an absolute cock block of a good time. I also think it makes total sense. And it couldn't have been anything more than what it was.
Yeah, I mean, if we just look at Nesta and Azriel, there was no way, nothing Bryce could have done to earn the trust of the inner circle. Didn't matter. She spiritually represents a threat, no matter what, no matter her intentions. I'm going to hypothesize that why readers were so mad about this sequence the first time that they read it, A, it didn't meet their expectations. They thought there would be a training sequence, thought it would be longer, et cetera, et cetera. I also don't think anyone expected both sides to be bad.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Bryce is not good. Nesta, Azriel, the inner circle are not good, right?
Yeah.
They're not coming together and singing Kumbaya. It's just not what they're made of. That is not who they are at their core. And when there is so much mistrust on both sides, they're never going to be able to get there. And I think that in and of itself is irritating, because we know at their heart that these are really good characters with really strong morals. It just so happens that when their morals are viewed from a different lens, they don't seem very moral.
Yeah. And also, like, when it comes to like timing and pacing of a book, you cannot have Bryce over at Prythian for a large majority of the novel and then suddenly come back to her world and fix everything. Like, it was never going to be a long amount of time. It was always going to be short. And I think past me, like, didn't rationalize that realization. It wasn't until reading this, and yeah, it was disappointing. And I wonder how it would have played out if we didn't have which is the best cliffhanger I have ever read. And I don't know if I will ever read a cliffhanger as good as that again. Epic cliffhanger. But what if we didn't have the cliffhanger and all of this had played out in one book? In the sense that, like, oh my God, she's now in Prythian. Oh my God, now she's gone. Like, would we have had the same feeling of like, but she was barely there? Probably. But it was a lot of years of hype.
It was a lot of years of hype. I think if any of us had been able to remove emotion and expectation and think about it from a purely writing convention, novel construction point of view, I think maybe we would have been able to be rational about the fact that Bryce needs more time within Midgard in order to save Midgard.
Yeah.
She can't be in Prythian for months and then come back and fix Midgard in a day. It's just not going to happen.
But we have a lot more to discuss for next time. All right, ready?
Yep.
Yeah. Thanks for listening to Book Talk for Book Talk with Jack and Amy. Join us this week for our breadcrumbs and broomsticks discussion of today's chapters from Sarah J. Maas's House of Flame and Shadow.
If you're enjoying the show, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. It really helps other readers find us. And of course, we'd love to hear what you thought of today's episode. Share your comments through our forum at booktalkforbooktalk.com, and we might feature your feedback in a future mini episode or in a Patreon exclusive episode.
For merch and more ways to support this show, head to booktalkforbooktalk.com. You can also follow us on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube at the handle Book Talk for Book Talk. Bye.
Bye.